Joe Kwon, thank you so much for joining me on the Real Clear Values podcast.
Tom, I'm so excited you're doing this, and I'm excited to be here with you again.
It's interesting we're talking in this context because it very much feels like the tables have turned, because I've been on your podcast a couple of times, and so I had to reciprocate. I had to have you on this podcast because there's so much that I want to learn about you as well, because it's fair to say that you are a man who has many strings to his bow. I look at your CV on LinkedIn and your experiences, and you are a connection counselor. You are also an author. You've written the book, Unlock Your Executive Presence. You're a podcast host. You're quite prolific in the podcast arena, and you're also a privacy attorney. So how do you decide, in the midst of all these different things that you focus on, given that we are speaking about values, how is it that you decide what's going to get your time, your focus, and your attention?
Yeah, absolutely. And I get a version of that question from a lot of people, Tom, where they're like, where do you find the time to even do some of the things that you're doing? And, you and I, as we do stuff, we don't realize like how much we're doing. Like it's almost only when someone else points it out, or maybe we reflect at the end of the year, you're like, wow, I actually did a lot of stuff. So the thing that helps me decide what I should really be doing is it's already kind of determined, right? It's like driven from the thing that I've decided I'm supposed to do for people, for the community, for the universe. And here's the magic. Once I got clear on that, everything else just started to fall into place. And although I don't have just one path, right? Like you mentioned a lot of different strands, strings to my bow. Love that metaphor, by the way. They all combine together to make that same music, right? To make that same music that I'm meant and that you're meant to do with all the great work that you're doing with your 3 stewardships. So to me, that's the real battle. The battle is not, oh, should I do a podcast or write a book? Everything becomes much easier when it's like, what battle am I fighting?
Yeah.
Right. And then different opportunities come your way, different nuances. And then sure, you have limited time and you have to decide to prioritize. Generally, what works for me is I try to like lean into one thing at a time, not try to do 2 or 3 different times, because then you end up with like a bunch of half done stuff.
Yes.
But to me, really, anyone looking to be more productive or, pursue something as an outlet, when you really understand the why, and Simon Sinek is like the most famous for, talking about this and bringing this, to us. Then everything else starts to have more clarity and start to fall into place.
So the inevitable question that follows from that is, how do you determine what that is? Because you've got this overarching superstructure, if you like, into which these different activities plug in. So, okay, well, yes, I'm doing the podcast. Yes, I'm writing a book. Yes, I'm doing this other thing, and they all fit together in this coherent whole. But how do you figure out what that why is, if you like, what that coherent whole is into which all these things fit?
Yeah, love that question, Tom. To me, it's 2 parts that are fairly straightforward, but I wouldn't say easy to do, right? They're easy to grasp, like I can talk about them intellectually, but for you to actually execute on them, it can be challenging for even the best of us. Part 1 is just to live your life fully. To experience life and just be out there, trying different things, meeting different people. The surest way to not discover what you're really about is to paint a tiny little box and stay in that box and never leave that box, because you'll only know what's in the box. And you may be way outside the box, but you don't realize it because you're scared or whatever reason, unable to step foot outside the box. Not a judgment, just kind of a principle, right? And the second thing is, as you start to do that, it's not enough to have experiences. You have to sort of read the signs or understand the feedback that's coming back, because certain things, and you've experienced this too, light you up, right? That's a clue, right? Certain things. Have you ever had someone kind of like, you're talking too much about something, Tom, and you can tell like, oh my God, I've gone overboard, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So that's the thing that you're about, Tom. You can't help yourself. And then you get the other reaction. There's certain things that we talk about and people aren't interested, and other things we talk about and it just draws people in, right? Because they see our passion, they see our spark. So the clues are out there. It's just choosing to take the effort to reflect. So it doesn't have to be anything, like meditation or journaling. Like the vehicle itself is
Mm,
not as important. There's many vehicles, but you got to have the intention to go on the journey and say, you know what, I'm going to
mm.
try to figure this out. And then you start looking for the clues, you see the signs, and eventually you figure out your why.
Yeah, I love that. I love that answer a lot because that really speaks to me in terms of my own path as well. And that idea of seeing the signs. And I think you're absolutely bang on in the sense that you have to be willing to receive the signs. You have to tune into that frequency, if you like. I think Joseph Campbell talks about this in his work on the hero's path and the hero's journey, where he talks about you have to be willing to heed the call, because if you're not willing to heed the call, then you're not going to hear it in the midst of the hubbub and the commotion of today's world that is, as I keep banging on about, full of distractions, temptations, and challenges. So I really like that. I really like that answer. One thing that I think about in relation to this as well is, like you say, we get these little signs, don't we? It's not like something necessarily hits us in the face and says, this is your purpose. It's not like an angel just descends from heaven and says, this is what you're going to do. But what I find is that it's kind of like, if you think about it, like in a fairy tale, you have these breadcrumbs on a path in front of you. You might only get like one or two breadcrumbs on the path ahead, and you don't get any more than that. And sometimes you're like, well, I want to see the whole thing. I want to see this on a map. I want to see it from a bird's eye view. Where are we going here? And you don't get that. You just get these small things. So I agree that you don't necessarily need to do all these really esoteric practices. But I think something that I find useful is journaling is really good as well for just noting it down and saying, oh, right, okay, now I can see a picture emerging, because whereas we can't see the whole picture in advance, we can look backwards. And I think that reflecting backwards is really useful, because then you can start to say, that's why that happened, and that's why that happened. So in my career, when I think about difficulties that I've had, like whether it's a failed startup or whether it's a difficult job, a difficult boss, a difficult experience, I'm able to look back and think, right, okay, this is what I was able to learn from that experience. So it wasn't a waste of time. It wasn't a curse. It wasn't a punishment. It wasn't just aimless suffering. There were so many lessons in here that I took from that for this purpose that I'm now on, to serve other people. So really interesting. And I'm digressing here, but it's such a fascinating topic for me to get into. So what do you, out of these things that you do, Joe, what is it that you particularly enjoy the most? Because I noticed at the top of your list is connection counselor. So I might be nudging you a little bit here, but is that one of the things that you enjoy the most? And if so, why is that, do you think?
Yeah. So the main kind of I guess super objective, let's just call it, that I have, and I think I'm borrowing that from an author and friend of mine, Kimberly Davis, is to connect people in a way that they can fulfill their fullest potential. And that connection happens on two levels. The first is the one we've been talking about, connecting to yourself. Like what are you really about? However, as many people will tell you, you don't do any good in a cave, like realizing this is what I'm about. Like the actual impact happens out in that crazy world, whatever that means, right? For your particular profession or vocation. And so that is the second part of the connection between your newly discovered self and your super objective, and how you connect to others to help move them along and create that great synergy between the two of you. Connection counselor is also a pun because I'm a lawyer by training. That's not really my goal to be a lawyer for the rest of my life. Doing the type of stuff that we do is really sort of my second career, and I'm moving very much towards that. So that's, to me, is really the goal, to help people unlock their fullest potential.
Excellent. So with that in mind, Joe, just to elaborate a little bit on what is a connection counselor, what does your work look like as a connection counselor?
Yeah, absolutely. If I could oversimplify it, I would say it's everything that's not technical, right? I'm not here to teach folks how to, market better emails or to create better logos or anything that's in the technical space. It's purely in the interpersonal space. I don't really use energy because people get the wrong idea, but it really,
Yeah.
it's that space between you and me,
Yeah.
right? Between you and the crowd, between you and the client, right?
Mhm.
There's this thing between you and the other person. And that's important. That's actually where a lot of the stuff and the decision making happens. So it's about understanding that connection, how the way you move affects that connection, and how you can impact that connection with other people to get the best results. And the analogy I like to use is gears. Right? If you're a gear and you're not connected to any other gear and you're spinning around, you can spin really fast, but what have you accomplished? You've just spun in space. But
Yeah.
if you connect your gear to another gear, now when you spin, they spin. But here's the crazy thing. When they spin, you spin. Right? You're connected. It's not a one-way thing. You don't get to control everything. Connection, by definition, is a two-way street. And that's also part of the challenge of the practice, understanding like, look, I'm not just going to change you, you're going to change me.
Yes.
Right? But in a way that's empowering and greater for both of us in a positive kind of way. So that's kind of, to oversimplify that, that's kind of like the emotional energy, the interpersonal aspects. That's where I focus on.
It strikes me that it takes a great deal of humility for somebody to sign up to that idea that they're open to somebody else changing them, because I think we can all think to a greater or lesser extent that we have got something to offer other people. Oh, I can help him with this, or I can help her with that. But are we open to other people changing us as well? And do we have the faith that we can actually open ourselves up to that sort of change? So how is that, Joe, when you're working with other people, in terms of getting them to be open to that? How do the benefits of what is possible weigh against any fear or anxiety that people might have about the unknown?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I think the first part is just getting them to understand even the most basic concept, which you just explained. And the way I like to approach that is to ask, like, who can you really control? Like, who is the only person in the world that you actually have full control over? It's not your kid. It's not your spouse or partner. It's not the people you work for. There's an illusion of control.
Yes.
And even the things that they do that you think are control, they're not actual control. They're that person deciding that what you want them to do is in alignment with their best interest for the time being. They're still in control, right? The only person you can truly fully control is yourself, although sometimes it doesn't feel that way. Sometimes we feel like we're out of control. But the truth of the matter is, like, the only person you have a shot at actually controlling reliably is yourself. And the thing that unlocks all of it is when you move. And see, there's two ways you can move. You can move and have no impact on someone else, right? And that's because you're not connected. But when you have a strong connection, and the connection comes first, right?
Yeah.
Not the movement. When you have the strong connection, by necessity, your movement will impact them.
Yes.
So there's a lot of people we're connected with, and we're so busy trying to move them, and we don't understand why their gear is stuck.
Yeah.
Right? When all we have to do is we got to move our gear like just a little bit, and oh my gosh, they're acting totally differently. What happened? Right? What happened was the way you were acting was part, not the reason why, but was creating a situation where they were stuck. And only by you moving off of your position was it able to release something so they could move off of their position. And that's kind of, it's very difficult to come to terms with that. But once you do, it's like the world is wide open in terms of how you can impact others.
Yeah. So much potential, and it's exciting. I always get excited when I think about this, and I think about reaching out and connecting with people. And it's the same thing with this podcast as well. When I thought about who could I talk to, and this second season that I'm doing is the first season of interviews that I'm doing, and it's literally just who do I want to talk to, and what sort of conversations do I want to have. And that's really exciting, to sit down and just send emails out to people and say, hey, do you want to have a chat about this in relation to your work? And when they get back to me and they say yes, and surprisingly to me, certainly from what I was expecting initially, most people come back and say yes. Most people answer in the affirmative and say, yeah, let's set up a time. It's actually really plain sailing. But that idea of having a potential conversation or connection with someone is really exciting. And it opens up so many possibilities for future learning, for future growth, and future collaboration. So, Joe, your analogy of the gears is really good, because I like this idea of not wanting to just spin on your own and spinning really fast and spinning aimlessly, because that's kind of pointless. And if you're looking at it from a human point of view, it's kind of nihilistic. It's meaningless to spin on your own at any degree of speed. So how is it you go about deciding who to connect with? Do you have some sort of criteria that you use to decide who, not necessarily who specifically, but which types of folks or people in which sorts of roles or industries or whatever are useful to connect with for mutual gain, not just for you, but also for them as well?
Yeah, what I would say to that is the easy approach, or the sort of like that first level thinking about it, is just by identifying people who seem to be sharing kind of the same, to use your terms, like values that you do, right? Like when you have those common values, it's very easy to sync with people and say, look, you do this and I do this, they're different, but we have the same values, so we can help each other. So at a very kind of not superficial, but like at the highest level, at the top level, easy level, that's one. At a deeper level, I would say it has to really do with people who share your specific mission, right? So that's even better, right? Like someone who really wants to be in that space, and those people can really help you, and you can really help them accomplish something very specific. And the third level, and this is the toughest level, is basically everyone else in the world, right? Now, is it worth always investing the time and energy to connect with someone who isn't at level 1 or 2? No, it's not always worth the time and energy, because we have limited time and energy. However, there's a caveat. That doesn't mean there's no value in connecting with people who seem at the first 2 levels not to really be, quote unquote, our people. Because what happens is anyone you connect with becomes your people, becomes your tribe, because you've connected. Now, it may be difficult to get there. You may not be able to see it right away. It may take longer to make that connection. But the surprising thing is, once you make that connection, there's no hierarchy of value, right? You could connect to someone who you feel so resonant with, and the value that relationship provides, for whatever reason, for whatever circumstance, could be very minimal, right? Good, but minimal. And there could be someone else, you're like, I don't look like them, I don't speak the same language with them, we're in totally different fields, but for some reason that connection just creates something so amazing. So I don't ever try to really write those people off, but obviously everyone has to sort of prioritize their time and be responsible with balancing things. But that's kind of my sort of 3-level approach, so to speak.
Yeah, I like that. And I like that idea of connecting with people where there is just that spark, because we can be quite formulaic about this, in the sense that we say, well, who's our tribe in relation to values, who's our tribe in relation to purpose, and all these things like that, and we can be quite rational about it. But sometimes, from my own experience, the strongest connections that I've had in my life have been not based on rationality whatsoever. And the key experience that I had with that was when I was a missionary in Madagascar, and I was meeting people from, let's say, the southern United States, so guys from Texas, and I was from the north of England. And we didn't have, on paper, we didn't have common values. We certainly didn't have a common background whatsoever. Yet I formed such a strong connection with these guys. Yet we were so different that it was that kind of yin and yang effect, where we were different but complementary. So on paper, looking at it rationally, you wouldn't think that there was that much to really go with. But actually there was loads, because there was that. I mean, of course, we were in a missionary context as well, so we were there within that common purpose. But besides that, there were other people I could have spoken with or hung out with who would be more in common with where I was coming from, but it didn't necessarily work like that. So I like what you say about not writing people off, and I would say to kind of take that further and not wanting to put words in your mouth, but not being too rational about it, because there is that kind of X factor, that unknown that comes into play, I think, in relationships as well, where there is sometimes just that spark between two people, and they seem like the most unlikely of partners, but they work extremely well. I think about my wife as well, and how we're just the complete opposites to each other in terms of our tastes. So some quite fundamental differences there, and we just laugh about it now. We make a joke out of it, because we literally are just yin and yang. But the skills that she's got and the skills that I've got complement each other. So this is great. So Joe, in terms of being practical about this, then let's get into a mini case study. And I'm going to be a little bit selfish here, because I've had this hunch for a while about New York, for example. Okay. And I've thought about a personal goal of going to give, let's say, for example, giving a speech in New York. Mm-hmm. So if I wanted to do that and I wanted to connect with people in New York, what would you be giving to me as advice from a practical point of view, and how to go about that? Bearing in mind what you've just said, and maybe some other pointers along the way.
Yeah, great question. So a couple things. I believe you've already accomplished one of the most important parts, which is you've identified that goal in your mind, right? Like you've set that. So that's going to help your awareness. And it's interesting, like I truly believe like a lot of the things that we need are kind of out there, and a lot of it is about how much we notice or receive them. Because you could be walking down the street and you need $5 so you won't get a ticket, and there's $5 on the ground. Some of us may see the money, some of us may not, right? Yeah. So the other thing I would add is what's very difficult though is to keep that focus. Yeah. Right. So whether it's some sort of visual reminder or like a daily thing or an accountability partner, all those things are powerful, not because of the thing itself, but because it keeps that like in your mind and like refreshes it over and over. The other thing I want to share, and it's a little bit harkening back to what you were saying about, your Madagascar trip and your experience there. What I find so fascinating about it, and I think it applies to your question here, I learned something recently. I read a book called The Confusion Experiment by Emily Conti. And one thing she said in the book is our minds, right? Like, and you use the word rational, our minds are actually limiters. Yes. Because they can only execute and allow things that they know. Mm-hmm. Our minds are not comfortable with the unknown and the potential. It's our hearts, right? You talk about spark and feeling. It's our hearts that allow us to go beyond what's normal. And you hear this in relationships, right? Like, oh, they're perfect on paper for me, but there's just no spark. Or I really shouldn't be with this person, right? From a philosophical, social and economic, religious, whatever point of view, I'm not feeling it, but we work so well together. It's only the heart. When you access the ability to know your, whatever you want to call it, intuition, spirit, heart, the word is not important to me. But when you get away from just like, the calculation and the transactions of it, and open yourself up to like what you kind of already really know, it's just whether you allow yourself to know it, then so much more can happen. One last point, because I know you're looking for some more practical, advice here. Yeah. So what I would say for that is, it's really, to me, whenever I'm trying to do something specific, it's about triangulation, right? So you always want to identify at least 2 or 3 people that will help you go in a certain direction. Because what's going to happen is 2 out of the 3 of the people are going to be too busy to think of you and let you know about something that's going to help you. So you always want to like talk to the one person and say, hey, who else can I talk to? And sort of try to get everything pointed in the right direction, because you only need that one kind of connection, or just like a job, right? You apply to like 100 jobs, you're just looking for the one job, right? So you need the one interview and callback. And what also helps with that is it allows you to be light. and relaxed and free, which people respond to. It's not like, oh my God, I'm talking to this person, and if they don't give me what I want, then oh,
Yeah.
what am I going to do? How do you respond to that? Like, no one wants to talk to that person, right?
No. No, that's right. Yeah, that thing about relaxing and just chilling out. This is what I say to people all the time. If they're in a situation where they're looking for a job or they're on a path to something, it's very easy for us to build all these things up in our minds and think, wow, this could be the one. But then it might not be. You've got so many other people to talk to. Just relax. It's the same with relationships as well. When I talk with people I'm working with as a mentor, and they say, well, actually, one of my goals is to get married, and we have a conversation about that, and one of the first things I say to them is, who are you speaking with that might fit that criteria? And when I say that, I'm not talking about setting up a CRM for potential for potential spouses. I'm talking about, what sort of conversations are you having with people? How are you getting to know them? How are you talking with them? And just relax, just chill out. Just because when people go into those situations, whether it's for a job or for a relationship, and they're really tense about it, it's so off-putting. It just repels people, because we can never be our best selves when we're acting from a place of fear and we feel like it's all or nothing. So yeah, I like that point about just actually, yeah, let's just relax about it. And we don't need 100 jobs, we don't need 100 spouses, we just need one. One will do, but just take your time with it and feel your way into it with your heart.
I like that you use the word repel. I mean, because that perfectly captures kind of the feeling that I was thinking about. And I also think it's interesting that part of this, and we all do this, right? Like, I'm guilty of this as well. And we get stuck, or for lack of a better word, obsessed on a certain goal. Part of that stems from sort of let's just be kind. We'll say temporarily misunderstanding that your goals or your happiness or your satisfaction is somehow outside of you, right? It's like we often think, oh, if I just get this job, or if I just get into this school, or marry this person, or whatever it is, like we're what we're doing is we're putting that outside of ourselves, and we're giving the power to something outside of ourselves, which creates the desperation, which creates the repulsion, which creates the unhappiness. And then you get stuck in this cycle of never getting what you want. And you wonder why the world is so cold and heartless and cruel. Well, it's because you're pushing everyone away, because it's too much pressure. People can barely make themselves happy. It's too much pressure for them to make you happy and give you everything you want. So when you can approach things, and I love that you pulled out the relaxed part, when you can approach things with, you know what, if this doesn't work out, there's other things that I can do. Maybe you're not the right person, maybe someone else can help me with it, but I know that no matter what, I am going to continue on my path. I'm going to find satisfaction from doing what I want to do and fulfilling my why. And then that allows all the energy to flow and the goodness to happen.
Definitely. I love that. And just focusing on what you can control, and not expecting somebody else to make you happy, or to be, quote unquote, the rescuer in any degree, whether that is to give you the job, to give you the opportunity, to give you the relationship, or whatever. So I'd like to shift gears slightly now, Joe, if that's okay, because we're talking about connection. This all sounds great to me, and I'm excited about this. I'm more excited than I was before speaking with you about connecting with new people and fulfilling my own aspirations, working with those I can serve and who can help me along my way also. We live in such a divided time and a divided world, and it seems like there are fault lines everywhere, a ridiculous number of fault lines. And it's not just politics, it seems like it's almost everything. And it seems like everybody has to voice that opinion, or they feel compelled to voice that opinion, and people getting angry with each other, and there's a lot of name calling, there's a lot of division going on. So how can we connect better in this divided world and not get sucked in to these divisions, these fault lines, and this tribal binary us versus them sort of mindset?
Yeah, it's a great question, and this is very difficult to accomplish, right? So even if you know what to do, our our passions, let's just say,
Yeah.
can sometimes get the better of us. And I think one of the keys for me, um, if you really want to choose to be in a relationship, and I don't mean like, anything particular by the word, right? But
Mm.
if you're going to engage with someone, right, who is on the opposite end of the spectrum, and you don't see eye to eye on many things, the number one thing you can do to truly have a better connection is to understand that they are where they are for their own purposes in a way that makes sense to them, and
Mm.
not to try to convince them or change them prematurely before you're even connected to them
Mm.
that there's anything else. Because at that point, again, it's like the repulsion, right?
Mm.
Like people feel like, oh, this person's trying to change me, or they're judging me, or they think they're better than me. I mean, when have we ever responded well to anyone in our life treating
Yeah.
us that way? However, if you can sort of control that, and again, it's about controlling yourself, right? Because that's the
Mm.
hardest part. Like, because believe me, I know it's not easy
Definitely.
to keep control of yourself in the face of what you may consider, for lack of a better word, stupidity or incivility. But if you can sort of stay in that discomfort long enough to get to a point where you start to mine the similarities that you may
Yes.
have, and that's the interesting thing, right? As human beings, it doesn't matter your political or your ethnic affiliation. If you are hungry, you're going to want food like I do. If you're
Mm.
thirsty, if your kid's in trouble, you're going to have the same sort of anxiety as I
Mm.
do. There are way, 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 way more ways two people are alike than different. The
Yes.
difference is the filter we choose to use to view people. And the filter is usually through the filter of the difference, not the filter of the similarity. So if
Mm.
you can start to view people through the filter of similarity and give them that, they start to reciprocate, right? That's another big
Yes.
thing, reciprocation as opposed to repulsion. And they're like,
Mm.
you know what, Tom, you're not that bad of a guy. I'm like actually kind of
Thanks.
surprised. I'm enjoying talking to you, right? And then that's like the connection, right? Now the gears
Yeah.
have come together. And here's the caution: they're
Mm.
going to affect you as you're going to affect them. You don't get to change the world and create the world
Mm.
in your image. You are not God, right?
No.
But through your connection, you can have an impact on people, and people can impact you, and hopefully
Mm.
both in a positive way, which sort of enriches both of your lives.
Yeah, I love that. That you've just reminded me of a powerful experience I had when I was at a football match before the pandemic, and it must have been in 2019 now. And I was sat down before my dad. He was messing about. He'd gone to the loo, and we were sat in a different stand, and he couldn't find the seats. And I sat next to this guy, and he was quite an interesting character, shall we say. And he had some quite strong views about immigration that he was sharing with me.
Yeah.
And he was going on and on and on, and he was just broadcasting. And I thought, it's a Saturday. I'm watching my team. I want to get into the game, get into the spirit of
Yeah.
supporting Leeds United, the football team that I support. I don't want to be dealing with a xenophobic rant here.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what was interesting was he pointed to some tattoos that he had on his leg. I think it was a tattoo that he had on his leg of the cross of St. George, and he was talking about people who'd fought and died for the country and in the world wars, and how these people had built this country. And I said to him, you know what, you're absolutely right. It's fantastic that those people gave that great sacrifice, and they gave that great sacrifice for us so that we can live in the world that we live in today. And I just tried to build on that commonality of the fact that, yeah, completely, it's amazing that they did that. And this is the world that we live in. We live in a world that enables us to have a diverse culture where there are different types of people who are tolerated. We don't have a monoculture. We're not living in under Nazi rule or something like that, because
Mm-hmm.
of these men and the sacrifice that they made. And I remember I shared from the New Testament. I just ad-libbed it: greater love hath no man than this, than a man lay down his life for his friends. And how in this stadium right now, we're all friends. We're all supporting Leeds. We're all Leeds fans, and it doesn't matter what the colour of our skin is. It doesn't matter where we're from. We're all United and we're all Leeds. And that really spoke to him. And it touched me because he gave me a hug and he just said, where have you been all my life? And we were totally cool from that. And it really made me think about how I could have written him off so easily. I could have thought, this is just some racist dude who's ranting and driving me nuts for a short period of time. But on that particular occasion, and I don't always do this, and I'm not perfect at this by any means, but on that particular occasion, I thought, you know what, I'm going to lean into this. I'm going to have a conversation with him. I'm going to figure out where his beliefs are coming from, and is there something there that we can talk about? Because there's so much good in all of us that I believe is eroded by the perceptions that we've got of the labels that are on us, whether it's whatever affiliations that we attach with, whether it's a political party, a religious group, whatever it is, even sports teams as well. And we erode the nuances of our characters and the points at which that we can connect, like you talk about, Joe, leading with the heart, because if we lead with the heart, then we're more able to do that. So I love that you reminded me of that experience.
Well, if I might add, the beauty of that story, and I love that story, and it doesn't necessarily have to go there, but let's say you forge some sort of relationship and you invite the person over to a barbecue and you start to develop, you build on this relationship. Think about how much more likely they are to start to view the world maybe a little bit more expansively than they have, and maybe come off of some of those xenophobic views, and think about maybe things that you and I, right, have not thought about because we're not xenophobic, that we may learn about ourselves and about other people. And that doesn't happen, right? If to your point, if you just wrote the person off, it only is possible because you are able to control yourself, right? And just stay in that discomfort zone, because it's discomforting and it's uncomfortable, and it's, to some people may even say distasteful, right? For you to like have to listen to that on your day off. But it's necessary, right? For you to connect and to expand and to grow and to reach people and impact people, you have to go through that. There's no shortcut.
Absolutely. I love that. I love that point you make about discomfort, because I think discomfort is so underrated in the world that we live in at the moment, because everybody's trying to make things so much more comfortable for us. And I think that's part of that. I don't think it's nefarious in any way. I think it's because people are trying to build businesses, people are trying to sell products, and people are generally trying to make the world a better place. But we have got into this desire of comfort, and it's in the uncomfortable situations. It's learning to be comfortable in uncomfortable situations that's going to help us to move the needle forward, to get beyond this banging of heads together over these issues that we've got, and instead to actually look at the commonalities, the things that really connect us, all the things that should connect us, and not just go into the default. I want to shift gears again a little bit, Joe, to talk about connection with place, because I remember you wrote a post on LinkedIn, and it was a few months ago now, and it was quite interesting because you spoke about a revelation of sorts that you received when you went to South Korea. So tell me a bit about that, your connection with South Korea, your connection with America, and this revelation that you experienced.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I definitely remember the article you're talking about, Tom. And, I was born in the US and educated here, been here all my life, except for when I'm traveling. And there was a year between undergraduate school and law school that I spent in Korea teaching English, as well as trying to learn the Korean language, which unfortunately I'd forgotten a lot of as I grew up. And growing up in the US and often living in towns where maybe I was the only Korean family or one of two, you always felt this sense of otherness, right? Just because from a physical feature standpoint, I cannot blend in, right? It's not possible. I look different than the other people in town, and my family does. So when I was in Korea, I'm at a bus stop and I'm just looking around and I just see all mostly South Koreans there because it's a pretty homogenous country. And I'm thinking, wait a second, I look like the majority. I'm in the majority. If you don't look like me, you're the minority here. And it was just like, whoa, my mind was blown. I was like, I have never felt this in my life. Now you could say, oh, what about when you're with your family? Not the same thing, right? Your family is like a safe zone. But like to be in a physical space, the entire country is made up of people who look like me. It was like, wow, first time I ever experienced it. Now here's the kicker. The people in that country don't think of me as like them. They think of me as differently as maybe some people in America would think of me when they see me before they get to know me, because I didn't grow up in South Korea. My hairstyle, I had hair at the time, the way I dress, the way I walk, the way I talk even marks me as an outsider too. So it just really drove home to me sort of that powerful feeling of being home and having a place, which a lot of people who are immigrants or recent immigrants, or based on their appearance, they stick out compared to the majority, can be a challenge that, great for people who don't have that challenge, right? Because I'm not looking for people to have extra challenges, but you would not really understand that challenge unless you had it yourself.
Absolutely. That's so interesting. You mentioned about, even though you were there and everybody looked the same as you or similar to you, you were in the majority at that particular time. There were still those marked differences between you and everybody else due to your upbringing. It reminds me of when I was studying the Harlem Renaissance at university and reading the works of W.E.B. Du Bois and his idea of double consciousness, this idea of the African Americans had this sense of double consciousness, based on where they're from originally and them being in America, the color of the skin, and these different dimensions that have to be navigated. And again, it speaks to the complexity, the diversity, and the richness of each, not group, but each single person, each individual at the individual level, how it's not just a case of double consciousness, it's a case of inherent richness. And that is a beautiful thing. And I think it's a shame when we oversimplify with labels, because again, we lose a lot of that. And that, I think, is a driver for the disconnection, rather than focusing, like you said at the start, focusing on the shared values and the shared purpose, which is how we can find those connections between the different cogs and the different gears to actually move things forward together.
Well, and here's the funny thing about that, Tom, and I love that you're drawing this out about the labels and the way we do it. It doesn't have to be this way, right? I'm not saying it's easy, but I'm saying this is something that we, and by we, I mean like every individual member of society, I mean the institutions, the systems, we create this framework. And the framework, and here's the dastardly part, a system seeks to preserve itself. A system repels and works against anything that's changing. It always tries to go back to equilibrium, to homeostasis. So that's why you can always feel when you are in a party or a part that's trying to change a system, you always feel like you kind of make progress, and then whoop, you slide back into the thing. And that's not an accident. It's not because you didn't try enough. It's because you were a small piece working against a larger system, and the system is very powerful, right? So to change a whole system is like a whole nother degree of difficulty. And, I love science fiction. My wife and I, we love watching science fiction movies. It sort of makes kind of sense that, like, in a way, war is one of the great uniters, right? So you can almost foresee, like, and I don't mean to make light of our racial and other problems that we have in the world, but you can almost see that, like, one of the quickest ways for us to see each other as earthlings, as human beings, and not as different countries or races or religions, is for some alien to come out there and threaten our lives, right? And then now it's like, no, you are the other, and we are all together. And that's even wrong, right? Because maybe they are not as other as we think they are. But to me, like that focuses the mind on the commonality, that this is our home, this is our world. And it almost takes something like that to like more rapidly accelerate people's consciousness to understand that. A lot of people are working on that. You know, the work that you do is very important in that regard, but it's very difficult to shift the system, you know,
Yes.
very quickly. Only something like war or some catastrophic event can get people to really kind of like, oh my God, and reevaluate.
That's interesting. It leads on nicely to the next thing that I wanted to talk about with you, Joe, and that is connection in a leadership context about making change. So changing systems from a leadership position, because you've written on executive presence and you've also got a podcast on executive presence as well. So in view of what you've just said, what is executive presence and why is it important to develop it in change making?
Absolutely. Thanks for the question, Tom. So all of us come to a point in our careers where our technical ability no longer helps, right? Like either because you're not going to get that much better at it, or people don't really care that you're that much better at it. They're looking for other things from you, right? And then the thing that makes the difference is people asking you to do things that are on top of that, and also asking you to do things maybe that you've never done before because they're not a purely technical thing. So, you know, typical example, software engineer, right? You're a brilliant software engineer, you're making good money, Silicon Valley or wherever, you're going up the ranks. At a certain point, you know, because you're the most brilliant software engineer, they're like, we're going to give you a team and we want you to manage 10 of you, right? And then all of a sudden, this person has a problem because they don't know how to manage a team. They know how to write great code, they know how to critique great code, but they don't know how to inspire, they don't know how to motivate, they don't know how to keep people on track, they don't know how to communicate the goals. Those are all things that are entirely outside of the realm of technical ability. And that's where a lot of people in middle management start to get stuck. You're like, well, I've been so successful before, how come this isn't working anymore? Well, it's because, you know, people are asking different things for you. So to me, I always say executive presence is the actual thing that sets the ceiling for your career. You still have to have the skills, right? It's not about faking it. But if other people don't have confidence in your ability to lead, you will not get the opportunities to lead, and people will not be willing to, for lack of a better word, you know, take a risk or take a bet on you to be able to do something which you haven't done yet. Because that's how we grow, right? We're asked to do something that, like, I'm not growing if you ask me to review a contract. I've done that like thousands of times. Like, where's the growth there? But now if you ask me to do something that's totally new, like conduct an audit, and now I got to learn that, and I learn all these new skills, it's like, wow, I've really grown in this last year, but someone has to give me the chance. And why would they? Why do you give someone a chance? Because they inspire confidence in you that they're not going to screw you, that they will do a good job, right?
Or screw up.
The political capital that they expended to recommend you will be rewarded, and they'll look better because you did such a great job, as opposed to looking like they can't be a good judge of talent. So to me, executive presence, the definition I use, it's the ability to inspire confidence that you can lead well in a given situation. That's all it is.
Yes, I like that very much. That's one of your definitions that I think speaks very clearly to something that is very much needed for anybody who seeks to make any sort of change in an organizational context. Because there is this paradox. I was speaking with a really interesting lady on the podcast recently, Monica Stazuska-Kruk, who is working under Jeffrey Pfeffer, who is a professor at Stanford Business School, in relation to power. He does a module on power, and Monica is teaching on that. And it's very interesting, this idea of power as being a dirty word. It's seen as controversial, and it's seen as something that, oh, well, you know, if I'm a good person, then maybe I shouldn't be pursuing power, because that sounds quite Machiavellian and it sounds very cloak and dagger. But actually, if you are a good person and you've got, or at least you have good intentions that aren't selfish and that aren't about doing other people down on the way up, climbing over bodies, so to speak, then maybe you should be pursuing power. Maybe you have got a moral obligation to pursue power. Like you say, that notion of whether you want to see it as God or the universe or whatever giving you a calling, what are you to do with that? Who is that to serve? Because I can guarantee it isn't just for you. So the inspiration I've been given isn't just for me. It's been given to me so that I can serve other people. But in order to really serve other people and have an impact, you have to be in a position where you can do that. So I find it interesting that you're able to speak in this particular space and to this specific area in helping people to develop their power. So going back to the topic of underrepresented groups, Joe, how can your work in relation to executive presence help them to move forward and have greater influence in their organizations and their social spheres?
Yeah, so there's a few main principles that I like to talk about. I'll share, one with you for brevity's sake. And this goes along with a topic that we've all heard about. Some people may feel ad nauseum at this point, and that's authenticity, right? You hear like, oh, be authentic, you'll be powerful. What happens, Tom, when you are not like leadership? You be authentic. What is the reaction of leadership to your authenticity? They are not like you. So your authenticity is different than the leadership's authenticity, whatever they look like.
Yeah.
What's their reaction?
You're an outsider. You're an unknown quantity. You can't necessarily be trusted. Yeah.
So then you, as, let's just say, underrepresented, as opposed to leadership, and that could mean anything. It could mean your ability, it could be your neurodiversity. It's everything, right? It's not just race or gender.
Sure.
You can easily start to fall into the trap of negative thinking that, oh, I can be authentic, but only as authentic as you, leadership, want me to be.
Sure.
Right? So then you start to, you have two thoughts. One, this authenticity stuff is BS, right? It doesn't actually work, right? Because it's limited.
Yeah.
And two, you start to think, to succeed, I actually have to sort of sand off pieces of myself, right? That don't fit into the ruling leadership class or management class, because if I want to get ahead, they have to see me as one of them. And I love how you use the word outsider. And that's totally understandable. I felt that. I know a lot of people I've talked to have felt that, but it's missing a really important element. And that element, and I call this the authenticity seesaw. I like to use like sort of visual images.
Yeah.
Is the connection. Right? So the way I picture it is, on one side of the seesaw, you have your connection. And if your connection is really strong and then the seesaw goes down to the ground, right, on the right-hand side, then on the other side, it goes up. And on the other side, you have the value of your authenticity. So when your connection is strong, your authenticity goes up, the value, and it's an asset. What happens when your connection is very weak and light? Right? That on that right-hand side, that goes up, right? The seesaw goes up and the value of your authenticity goes down. And then your authenticity becomes a liability.
Yes.
See, you're the same person. The only thing that changes in the equation, the missing piece, it's not you get to be who you want to be and everyone should love you. That's not the real world. No. The real world is when you are deeply connected to people, you can be within limits, as weird and freaky as you like, because they're like, oh, it's just Tom. It's just Tom being Tom. He's my boy, he's my guy, right? It's just Tom, versus who is that jackass? And how dare he come into my place of business or she come into my place of business and act that way? It's because what else am I supposed to think? I don't know her or him. Right? Yeah. So that's the missing piece for me that I try to share with a lot of underrepresented professionals. And it's not about blame, it's just about human dynamics.
Totally.
Right? And dealing with what is there until we have aliens attacking us and we all see each other as one Earth kind of race. This is going to exist. So what are you going to do now? What's going to work for you now to sort of move the needle on your authenticity, on your power? And this is just one of the tools I talk about that can really help.
Wow, that's so powerful, Joe, and I love that. I absolutely love that analogy because I've seen that before myself as well. When you go into a situation, you're thinking, well, can I be myself? Can I give them the full fat version, the unadulterated version? And for someone like me, that's kind of full blast. So I have to be I have to be quite careful about who I show that to. My wife of course sees it, and thankfully for me, she actually really likes it, notwithstanding the differences that we have.
Yeah.
But if I just went into a situation, I was full blast myself, having a laugh and being quite gregarious and outspoken, it would just be far too much. But then, like you say, it's working with people, and I love this phrase, meeting people where they are, meeting
Mm-hmm.
people where they are, not judging them and expecting, well, you should just take me for who I am because I'm a good person, and therefore you should just take me for who I am and however I want to be, and then that's it. Because like you say, that's not how the world works, that's not how people work. And if you think about our natural instincts for survival, we want to survive, so we want to minimize risk, we want to minimize uncertainty. So this has been a fascinating conversation, Joe. I'm so grateful for your time and your wisdom this evening. Is there anything in closing that you would like to share, that you are working on, that you would like to tell us about, so that we can benefit, that listeners can benefit more from your wisdom and what you have to impart on connection and executive presence?
Yeah, absolutely. So a few things, and I know people like to digest information in different ways. So kind of the way that I first started out was with my books. I have 3 books, Unlock Your Charisma. And there's lots of great tips similar to Executive Presence on Charisma, Unlock Your Executive Presence, which is my most recent book, I believe, and Unlock Your Connection. So again, those are all about those non-technical skills that help you take your career to the next level by being more effective with others. In addition, I have a few podcasts, but the one I'd point out for your audience, I just started a new daily podcast. You can find it on Anchor FM, Apple Podcasts, most of the major platforms. It's called Executive Presence Morsels. So I realize people are busy.
Yeah.
Every episode, 5 to 10 minutes, I share a different insight. And the best part, it's a daily episode. So every weekday, 7 a.m. Eastern sharp, it's a new episode that shares a leadership insight or tip or experience that can really help you on your executive presence journey. And the last thing, since we did talk about diversity, I do have a course on Udemy called Executive Presence and the Diversity Dilemma. So we talked about the authenticity seesaw. The course also explains the other 2 concepts that can really help. And the best part is the foundation of the course is actually executive presence itself and how to generate more executive presence. So I go into depth there and have some exercises. So for anyone looking to really improve their executive presence, any and all of those, I think are good places to start.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you so much, Joe, for your time.
Thanks, Tom. It's, as always, it's a wonderful conversation with you. Could go on much longer, but obviously we have to keep things within a border. So thank you so much for having me as a guest.
Absolutely. God bless, Joe.